All right, we're back after maybe a little bit of a unplanned break, but you and I are both just some busy men, Jackson. So
Oh
the
yeah,
good thing is we found some time here. We didn't miss too much last weekend, but it's good to be back nonetheless.
I'm gonna call it an accidental break because we did fully intend to have a podcast last week, but time got away from us. We're still trying to figure out what we want to make our like for sure certain day to record. Obviously, certain circumstances will bump it around regardless, but we're gonna figure it out. I'd love Sunday or Monday to be honest. But I know your Monday gets very hectic. I especially now that football's back in. Sunday NFL's coming up, so really who knows what's going to happen with it, but overall, we picked a good week to miss because the fights before it, there was a couple that I think matter. The fights from this most recent card, there's a couple that matter, and that all kind of combines into one list that we would normally do anyways. So
Yeah, yeah,
I think
but
we came out of this with five fights that we want to talk about from the last two cards. So that's a light workload for a fair few amount of cards that are just 1 week.
yeah, and I mean even with the pay-per-view coming up, this is one of the weaker. This is one of the weaker pay-per-views we've seen all year. Maybe the weakest. I'm not gonna definitively label it that, but off the top of my head, like this
That's
one, this one isn't great. Adesanya is the saving grace, obviously,
and even
but
that, the fight's not even a saving grace. It's
no,
just
because it's not
you
the fight that we were expecting.
no, and it's just that Izzy is enough of a brand, which is a very good sign. At least for the UFC that they can make that kind of money off of just Izzy. Um, but yeah, it's not exactly an exciting fight for me. But we'll have plenty of time to talk about it. What we can talk about that is also Israel Adesanya related. UFC 5. He get officially announced as the cover athlete?
So he's the deluxe cover.
So he's gonna lose.
Volkanovski and Valentina actually are the co-cover athletes,
So
which I'm
Volk will be the
I'm
only
very
one.
much a fan of that.
Volk will be the only one that breaks the UFC curse because they also have that, like Madden does. Have you,
Yeah, until next weekend when Valentina gets the belt back. But
dude?
it's
I
a
don't.
to wait, that's a little down the line.
Yeah,
I
we don't
I'm
have to talk
confident
about
that
it now. But have you looked at the actual track record of the UFC cover athletes? Um,
because I know with four it was Izzy, then he lost to Alex, and then they made it Alex and he lost to Izzy, which was pretty funny.
yeah.
But
Well, so UFC one was that Jones?
it was Jones. I know McGregor might have been on two actually, or like two
McGregor was on
covers,
three.
not UFC two, but
Yeah, he was on
yeah,
2 and 3, wasn't he?
yeah,
Because last year it was Izzy and Jorge. And then it was Connor Rousey the year before that. Rousey loses literally a week later. Connor loses a month later to Habib. And then on two, I think it was just Connor and he like disappeared for a minute, maybe. I don't know. But the point is that there's a very not awesome history of getting on the cover, but it's also the UFC. You're not meant to stay on top for very long. So take it with a grain of salt.
yeah. And listen, we have not seen anyone come close to touching Volkanovski in terms of competition at featherweight.
Yeah.
Um,
But
Obviously, Valentina did lose her last fight. So really, if she loses again, is it a curse? Because I feel like she already lost the belt before she was announced as a cover athlete. But
yeah,
you know,
because it would still be, I mean, if she loses, she still lost, against a fighter that many think that she should beat. And also, I think it's worth mentioning that a certain Ilya Taporia is on the horizon for Volkanovski. Now, I'm not saying he's capable of beating Alex, but I think that he's probably the most capable outside of Max Holloway in the first fight. So, and if you've got a different name that you'd like to bring up here, you go right on the head. But
no, that's what I was doing. I was trying to think of a different name, and like
well, I
feel
guess
like I
in the
feel like
second.
he's the best challenge, but like I still don't think he's good enough to beat Volkanovski right now, at
I don't think
least.
anybody is. I don't think anybody on the planet that can make that weight is good enough to beat Alexander Volkanovski.
Yeah.
But
But
the gameplay was cool.
let's how about let's get away from like the curse and talk about the game itself for a second. Can we do that? Like, is that okay?
I
Um,
mean, maybe. I'll think
I
about
know. Well, the thing is, you and I are both pretty regular UFC video game players.
it. Yeah.
The biggest struggle that I have in UFC 4 is any sort of joint submission. Those are extremely difficult to pull off, and it seems like they've changed it
With the
in
R2L2.
UFC 5. Yeah. So hopefully I'll be able to rack up some arm bars, some leg locks, some Kimuras, stuff
I,
like that. Because
yeah,
I've been exclusively limited to chokes in UFC 4.
yeah, with the circle animation.
Yeah.
Because that one is significantly easier.
Yes.
I wondered, and I mean, I wondered it since the game come out, why they decided to make it two different submission animations as opposed to just doing the one.
I mean, I get it kind of because like chokes and like joint submissions and like locks are different because you're going after the neck, obviously. Two, you're going after, you know, uh, arms, knees, you know, ankles, stuff like that. Like, I get it to an extent, but I don't understand why it has to be so much harder to get one of those joint submissions.
Yeah, I just well, and if you are going to make them different, I don't feel like joint submissions and then like chokes should be just the clear defining. Shouldn't it just be like different for every like I mean, I don't know how much engineering you want to put into your submission mechanics, but that would be pretty cool if there's just a different little mini game that you have to be doing to try to submit somebody.
Yeah, I think it would be kind of fun if they like um almost tiered it by the rarity
Difficulty.
of the rarity of the submission that you see in the UFC because you can pull off like a go-go plata in
Yeah,
UFC 4 like
nobody's
super
doing that.
easily. I love doing it. It's awesome. I enjoy it. But
But yeah, like RNCs and Gogo Pilates should not be on the same
yeah,
level of
the same
difficulty.
level of difficulty. Like I think that would be kind of a cool thing to do. And I mean, I don't think they did it in this one, but like it's a good idea. I'm excited to see what the submissions look like now. But
Wait, are you telling me that EA didn't go super in depth to find the best gameplay possible for their fan base and instead turned a game that's mostly focused on making money above anything else? You're shocking me. You
okay, hold on.
you're blowing the doors
I
off this podcast.
I I know where you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from on that. I think that's more of a shot directed at Madden.
And
UFC doesn't come out every year.
FIFA as well.
FIFA as well. Yeah.
Um,
FIFA, I think they do a better job than Madden. But
yeah, I
that's
can't play
neither here
Madden.
nor there. We're not here to talk about
I
it.
would actually. I'm going to talk about it for a second.
Okay, go.
Uh,
You know what? Go for it.
I'm going to steal it. It's a gripe. I bought Madden to play franchise mode. I don't play online. Like the only online games I play are with my homies that are also in the franchise. I can't play franchise right now because every player that comes out of a draft class is 6 foot, 180 pounds, African American, no matter who they are. You can't change them. You can't make them look correct. There's no way to fix it. O linemen and receivers look identical if they're rookies. I can't touch the game until that is fixed. It has been like 2 weeks since it's released. I am angry about it. So yes, that shot was at Madden mostly, but still, EA need to be better.
I'll tell you what. I will be as frustrated if they somehow mess up NCAA 24. If that game is not everything that I've waited for the last like 10 years, I'm gonna riot. But
Pretty similar to what they'd released all those years ago, but they'll introduce College Ultimate Team, and then in 2 or 3 years, the game it'll be the exact same but with new cards and stuff, and we will wish it never returned because it killed so much nostalgia. That's my prediction. But we can get out of the video game realm.
yeah.
We've got fights to recap. We've got stuff to talk about that actually pertain to an MMA podcast. So
Hey,
let's
UFC 5 does pertain. That's a big deal. It's a big
no,
deal. It's
but
a good game.
I'd say about 80% of that conversation we just had nothing to do with UFC 5, which is on me. I will take hefty blame for that. But overall UFC does look pretty cool. I will say.
Yeah. Oh, I'll buy it. I will be buying it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, no question about it. Do we want to start with Blanchfield?
Yeah, you take this away. This is your time to shine on that one.
Yeah, I mean, she keeps proving that she should have been the first overall pick for me, at least as far as positional value, as it were, relative to the rest of the women's division. Now, you did end up getting a nice little steal there that I'm sure we'll get to talk about before too long. I don't know when our next fight is, but Blanchfield had a tough opponent and she handled it. It was a close fight. It was one that kind of showed that but you needed a close fight. You didn't need some kind of shock value win there, because then you still have those questions about, oh, can she actually hang in there? Did she just land a lucky shot, or did she just, some by some grace of God get a limb and make her tap? Ended up being the right kind of fight for her to prove like, hey, I am on this level. I can go a full 3 rounds with somebody of Taya Santos's caliber. And she did it. She looks primed for maybe a title shot next. And I'm gonna go out here on a limb and say that she will be the first person that either of us drafted to become a world champion.
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible, especially because you factor in the two weight class possibilities there. But just going off what you said, this fight was kind of what we expected. I think we knew this was going to be a tough fight for her. Neither of us, I think, would have been shocked if Tyler Santos won.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I'm sure there are some people out there who think she did win because she fought really well. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from this fight is, one, Erin struggled on the feet. I think she struggled a little bit trading with Tyler Santos. And I think she was 0 for on her takedowns, right? Or not 0 for maybe, but
I mean, it was not a great percentage. I'll let me double check it.
I think there's one part of the fight where Tyler maybe made a mistake while they were in the clinch and they ended up on the ground. I don't know if that counts as a takedown or
So
not.
she's credited 0 for 14.
Okay, yeah. So she struggled. Yeah, she struggled a lot getting a takedown, and I think a Tyler Santos type could be, if you find someone of that build and skill set with a slightly better gas tank, that might cause some serious problems for Erin, because Erin's one of her biggest strengths is her conditioning. And I think if there's someone who can hold the pace of the first round for 3 rounds, then we have a challenge for her, and this was a challenge. I'm not saying it wasn't, but she still won. So I'm just thinking in terms of like what will it take to beat Erin Blanchfield, because she is so good.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have this fight 10 times, I don't know how many Blanchfield wins. She might win 6, she might win 3, but all I know is she won the one that they actually had that night, and that's all that matters. Now she moves on to bigger and better.
Yeah.
Which,
Yep.
and I don't know how much bigger or better it gets in that division, other than being a champion.
Well, I think the clear next step for her is going to be whoever wins between Valentina and Grasso next weekend.
You'd think so. But I could also see them wanting to have Blanchfield as a champion, but also wanting Tina. Like, I could see them being like, "Hey, Erin, how about you take that title shot at Bantam
at 35?" Yeah. And that's also it could be a next fight title shot for her at bantamweight too. So
yeah, there's multiple pathways that she can go through, and both of them were very contingent on winning that fight, which she did. All right, the next fight, Anthony Smith, Ryan Spann, controversial.
yeah.
I had Ryan winning that fight personally, but I don't know that it matters. You know what I mean? Like, other than for pride.
Yeah, I think some of it was the visual of Anthony Smith in that second round and how beat up he was in that third round. The third round was really close. I wouldn't have been upset if Spann won. Obviously, I picked Smith, so that helps me more. But like, it's not like I was going into that thinking, oh, like Ryan Spann got robbed. Like, Anthony Smith, I think, had a fair case to win that fight. if Span won, you know, that's just how it goes. It came down to the third round because the first 2 rounds, Smith dominated one, Span dominated two, and I thought it was very, very close in three.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. It's literally just however you wanted to slice the pie. You know, it was half empty, half full. And I guess my mentality was more so like we've had the argument of like the damage that Span had done. It was so apparent by that third round, like you said, that in my mind, it's like it's like Span won this fight, even though that's not how they judge. They judge it by round. So I think that that was kind of a mental barrier for myself to just be like, well, you would, if this fight was happening in a street somewhere, you'd be like, oh, this guy won. But it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's in an octagon where they get paid to actually cut it down as the fight goes on. So I would imagine you're going to have a lot more to say because I didn't watch the whole Max Korean Zombie fight. I told you guys I did not have the heart to do it. I did watch the finish and I watched the retirement speech. Well done, Korean Zombie. You deserved a nicer send out than you got, but seemed like it's what you wanted. You got to go out against somebody who is a legit monster in the octagon. And yeah, I mean, yeah, from what I understand, you got beat pretty bad, but at least you got your retirement speech.
The whole thing, the walkout, the fight, and the post fight just gave me chills the entire time. Like watching Korean Zombie walk out to Zombie for the last time. Wait, like you knew it was going to be his last fight. Like that was crazy. And he did have some moments in that fight. Obviously, Max was clearly the better fighter of the two, but Korean Zombie landed some good shots. And when he went out in that third round and just decided to say, screw it, I'm swinging just with everything I got. Let's see what happens. That's just, it symbolizes just who he was as a fighter, like just a badass dude, um, going out on his shield. And I loved it. It was entertaining. It wasn't sad. It was obviously sad that he lost, sad that he's retiring, but just seeing that kind of heart in his last fight and just saying like, you know what, let's just do this. Let's do this. I loved it. I thought it was great.
He went out on a shield, and that seemed to be what he wanted. So who am I to, really say a whole lot about the actual matchmaking and the quality of opponent that they put him up against for that last fight. If he was okay enough with it to sign the contract and to go out the way he did, then he got what he wanted, and that's really all that matters.
Yeah. So salute Korean Zombie. Hopefully one day we'll see you in the UFC Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he should. I know he never won a championship. I think a lot of his prime years, I think the window where he probably would have been able to win a championship were taken from him because he had to complete the mandatory military service in South Korea.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of unknown with, what could have been with the Korean Zombie, but either way, I think the before and after um of the time he was away was still more than enough. If guys like Donald Cerrone are getting in, you gotta give Korean Zombie his flowers.
I'd love to see them make a basically like a BMF wing. Don't name it that, please. Don't
Yeah.
spoil the branding.
Now,
But
I get where you're going.
yeah, but and transfer like Cowboy and put TKZ and guys of that ilk into that where it's not like because I would argue Korean Zombie did not have a Hall of Fame career because like you said, he had to go do his mandatory service and lost so much of the important years of his career. But he absolutely deserves recognition in because like you can tell the story of the UFC without saying the Korean Zombie, but the story of the UFC is a lot more fun if you mention it. And that's an important distinction and something that I feel like they should have some way of preserving guys like that. All right. So the next fight, I don't even really know that we need to talk about the actual fight. I think it's more the outcome. Talking about Ciryl Gane, Sergey Spivak. I it's very clearly Gane, Pavlovich, Aspinall after John leaves. Those are the three pillars of what's coming next. And
Yeah.
I know you've got like Jalton Almeida and you've got your personal flavors behind that, but I think the clear these are the next three, like who's gonna be the guy. I don't know how I'd rank them. I have no idea how I'd rank them.
Yeah, this one was kind of a reality check for me for how good Ciryl Gane is, because all I could think about leading up to this fight was him getting choked out by John Jones in less than a minute.
Yeah.
Um, and so that gave me some doubts, because Sergey Spivak is a very good wrestler. I like him a lot. And I was thinking Ciryl Gane's had 2 title opportunities, 2 losses. There's some questions of how dedicated he is to the sport a little bit, but he looked awesome. It's in the fact that he's been able to have 2 performances in front of the French crowd like he did with Spivak, and then I believe was it Derek Lewis? Maybe no, it was Tuivasa.
I'm about to say
Tuivasa.
he fought Derek in Houston.
Yeah.
That,
Um.
that was super sad.
Yeah. Very sad.
Um, but yeah,
But
he's been able to do it in front of his home crowd and do it very well. Just offhand, do you have like a ranking in your head of those three of how you perceive them as right, like just currently?
I think Pavlovich is definitely the best. I think he's the scariest. And we also, I think in terms of striking ability, what Gon brings with his athleticism and footwork, Pavlovich brings with his sheer power. Like, I think that's the great equalizer in that matchup. And we kind of know what Gon is on the ground, and that's not very good. He's got good takedown defense. Um, and so I think some of this is the unknown of Sergey Pavlovich, because we haven't really seen him wrestle yet.
We haven't
Uh,
had
because
he's
he's put people out in the first round every time he fights. So I would take my chances on Pavlovich, knowing that there's still maybe another advantage to his game that he could have over Gon.
yeah.
So that's why I'd rank it that way.
Well, and it's hard to dance around a nuke, and what Pavlovic has in his hands is truly nuclear. So you would go Pavlovic, Gone, Aspinall.
I think right now, God, Aspinall looks so good against Tybura, but again, the other two have fought and beaten better guys. So just by that, I have a lot of belief in Tom Aspinall. I like him a lot, and I think there's every chance in the world that he could become champion. But I'm going off of who I've seen these other 2 guys beat so far, and that's why I'll rank him that way.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfectly fair and normal way to. I would, if I had to do it, I'd probably go Pavlovic, Aspinall, Gone, just because we have seen Gone freeze up with when the lights are the brightest a couple times now. But if you gave me Gone versus Aspinall tomorrow, I couldn't. I don't know who I'd pick. So it's a very hairy situation. And then speaking of hairy situations, I refuse to believe that Thug Rose Namajunas, has become a boring fighter. That should,
Well, she didn't have Whitman in her corner. I don't know if you saw that, but
and we talked about that too.
yeah, it's just I mean, I did not understand the move to 125, to be honest, especially when she had beaten the current champ twice. Why would you like why? Why would you do that? Um I think I've been seeing some people on social media saying how Rose should have won the fight. I don't Jamal Hill. Um, but
You're going after your Michigan boy like that too. That's
I am,
wow.
dude, listen, I disagree with it. I love the guy. I just don't I saw that and I was like, brother, what the hell are you talking about?
To be
But
honest, I don't think either one of them should have won. But
no, I
Manon,
mean, I thought Manon she looked good. She was striking well, and I think it would have been even more decisive if it wasn't for the the clash of heads that had blood, pouring down the side of her face. Like she won that fight despite, leaking blood for the last 2 rounds.
yeah, I guess I just whenever an opponent's doing not doing much, I just assume the attack is going to be so much like swifter, I guess, and so much more decisive because you do kind of have a sitting duck. Like because Rose for most of the fight was just kind of doing what she's been doing and not really like something about her strategy is just kind of wait and see. I don't know if Pat Barry doesn't want her getting hurt, like if she thinks or if he thinks that putting his his fiance, wife, girlfriend, whatever she is, um, which I mean, whatever. But we've done enough Pat Barry come to Jesus meetings. We can move beyond it. But if he doesn't want her getting hurt and he wants her to play the strategic game, take her out of the octagon, put her in a kickboxing or something, because this needs to be over and done with. If you're gonna, if you're not gonna play the game, take your piece off the board.
I don't get that logic because if you're trying to not have her get beat up, why are you putting her in the cage against bigger women,
Maybe
against
so
women
she doesn't
10
have to
pounds heavier?
cut. The cut is the only thing I can think of because that in and of itself is painful. But yes, fight
I
night is extremely harder whenever you're moving up those scales. And I mean, it's just something needs to change. There
Well,
and
we know what that something is,
oh, we absolutely did. We
and
absolutely know that's
it's
something.
it's never going to is the issue.
I'm sure it will. Some will walk into the gym one day and Pat Barry will set his eyes on something else. But um,
That's crazy.
yeah, I'm instantly regretting my word choices there. That was me. That was me as
He was speaking as Pat Barry. We understand. We understand where you're coming from.
yeah. I'm probably still gonna believe it. But I'm not running the risk of that audio getting out. Um, but the point is that hopefully somebody important in Rose's life will tell her, "Hey, you need to get away from this." Um,
And the
and
creep, yeah.
yeah, it's disgusting. But all right, we're done with the review of the past 2 weeks. Again, very short rundown of what's been happening in the sport. Now we've got some predictions, which I also don't think will take that much time.
No, we only 4 fights on a pay-per-view, which kind of tells you how underwhelming it is.
Yeah,
And it really feels like this was kind of thrown together at the last minute,
it was.
with a lot of fight announcements in like the last couple weeks. You're banking on Duplessis and Adesanya headlining this card. And Izzy was adamant that he wanted to fight on this card. I don't blame him for it, but you can't knock a guy for not being able to fight 2 months after he fought, you know?
Yeah, it's the stars didn't line up, and I guess he will let him just have Sean Strickland, and we'll talk about that fight before too long. The first one we're going to lead off with Carlos Ulberg and Dawoon Jung. I personally not familiar with Jung. I think it'll be a fun fight because they both are KO artists. Um, but I think the easy bet here is Ulberg.
Oh, we've been Team Ulberg since day one.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
not changing for me.
no,
I Jung has fought like I want to say Jung has fought like a Dustin Jacoby. Like he's been in there, I believe, with like some pretty good dudes.
I'm on his
I
shirt. He did fight Dustin. So he fought
Yeah,
Dalton Clark, lost to Dustin, beat Kennedy and Nzechukwu. beat William Knight, debuted, Sam Alvey, Drew, not great. um, yeah, like he's got a track record. I don't know. I just never really, I don't guess I've ever
Yeah.
really paid attention.
Enzuchuku is that's a good win.
Very, but drawing with Sam Alvey wipes it all out.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that definitely, that's not what you want to see. But I do think that a win here, particularly for Alberg, because he's been on such a hot streak, will maybe not break him into the rankings, but he'll be damn close. He'll be like the 16 through 18 guy. I know that's not an official thing, but like he'll be in that range and be in position to get a ranked fight after this if he wins.
Well, and we're in college football season. He could be I guess he would be in the others receiving votes category.
He'll be in the University of Wyoming category.
Yes. Hey, Powder River.
That was I had to throw that in there. That was a phenomenal game. I was so that was so cool.
Also,
But
definitely just botched that. I don't know why I said Powder River.
it's
What
Cowboy Tough now. That's the motto this
they
year.
changed it? They changed it from Letterbox.
It's Cowboy Tough. I heard Cowboy Tough in like 3 press conferences
Man, that's
in
generic.
the course of the last 4 days or something.
Just is it Powder River Letterbuck?
It's yeah. No,
Is
that's
powder the correct word?
yeah. Powder River and Letterbuck.
Something in my head was telling me powder was wrong.
No,
See, that is such a way cooler motto. But we
it's
don't
still a thing. It's still a thing. But yeah, I had to do it. I had to do it. I was too fired up about them taking down Texas Tech. So, but yeah, that would put Carlos Alberg in that, barely outside looking in echelon, and would certainly give him an opportunity to earn a ranking in his next fight, I think, if he doesn't with this one.
Yeah. Yo, absolutely. So we get another pretty solid hype train by the looks of it in this next fight. Felipe Dos Santos draws Manel Cape in his debut with the company. I didn't know a whole lot about it before this fight got announced. Right? Like, he's a Shudo box guy. He's kind of bounced around. He hasn't really found a home in any one specific region. But from what I've seen, and he was one of the guys that I did sit down and do like some pretty genuine research on. He's capable of getting Manel out of there.
He is, but I also really like Manel Cape too. I think he's what he brings in terms of in power, really, as a flyweight. The power that he possesses at 125 is pretty special. And we've seen him kind of go off on social media at all the guys who pulled out of his fights before him. I hope that this is a test for him. I hope that this isn't a guy that he just mows down because he's making his promotional debut. But I'm still gonna take him here because I think he's dialed in. He's fighting well, and I don't want to take my chances with a newcomer against a guy like Manel Cape.
So I am actually going to take my chances. I'm going to say Felipe subs him because if there is one way to get around that power that Manel brings, it's to get him on the ground. And I think Dos Santos has that kind of ability to get him onto the mat. And if he can just hold him still for long enough, he can get a hold of a limb and get him out of there. And I don't think the UFC puts him in that kind of position if they don't think he's fully capable. So give me Dos Santos here for kind of my rogue pick, as it were. This next one, do you have any strong, like, are you gonna shock me and say Kozlov or Volkov rather?
I'm gonna say Volkov. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought this was a pretty cut and dry one. So I mean Volkov is very dangerous on the feet, and we've seen Tuivasa eat some shots, but I don't know. I've got a weird thing with Ty. I think he's just that step below those guys that we listed earlier. And I think Volkov is around there, but I don't think he's at the where Tuivasa is. Tuivasa realistically could just become the Volkov of the next age of fighters. But I think he gets back on track here and beats Alex.
I think Ty is super tough. I think he's a dog, but I don't think his. I think his. You have to match him up with the right guys to kind of get the most out of him, the most out of his performances. And I think he was formerly ranked like top 5, or maybe even top 3. Was he number 3 at some point?
Yes, I believe so. Right before the Ciryl fight.
Yeah, but I think God, I'm not sold on his fighting style holding up against some of these guys who can do different things, who have very good cardio like Volkov does, who has a little bit of wrestling like Volkov does. I just I think Ty is just he's like a Wonder Boy of the heavyweight division. You don't want to see Wonder Boy fighting wrestlers. And I think and I'm not calling Volkov a wrestler, but he's a guy who can wrestle and who probably will wrestle, I anticipate, in this fight.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm probably just going on who I like more. Because
Mm.
I have higher hopes for Ty, but I could definitely see this one swinging either way. I just, like I said, youth trying to make the best out of a situation where I guess Ty would more be the Derek Lewis than he would be the Volkov, because that kind of seems to be where he's trending.
Yeah.
Um, but that'll be a very fun one for the next for Saturday. And then this last one is,
No doubt about it. It's Izzy.
I will say, I kind of hope Sean wins just because it'd be funny. He
I mean,
won't.
it would objectively be very funny, but
You see Izzy on social being like, me and Drekus could have the best rivalry of the whatever and this, that, and the other, and then just Sean Strickland for no reason beats him.
that would be crazy.
Comes
That
out
would,
there and does what Pereira did to Sean.
yeah, yeah, that would be insane.
But no, it won't happen.
It's not gonna happen. No,
No,
it's not
Izzy
gonna
will,
happen.
Izzy will wipe the floor with him, and then Sean will go back to having more fun fights down the card.
Yeah, yeah. I wish there was really more to talk about with this fight. We could talk about the styles and stuff like that, but like, dude,
You don't even need to. If Vegas
it's
doesn't even respect this fight,
yeah,
we're not.
yeah. So
Man, we really blitzed through that. Maybe we should take weeks off more often.
I mean, really, we don't have a whole lot. Like, we have fight nights with some good fights at the top, but like, I'm not seeing really deep cards for the foreseeable future. So we'll
we
keep you posted. We'll have a matchmaker somewhere in here somewhere, but we're still trying to figure it out. We're doing our best. We promise.
We'll definitely need to pepper in a matchmaker and a draft at some point. But all right,
Yes,
you got anything else?
I'm all set.
All right, we'll see you next time.